Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. The aroma of slow-roasted brisket permeated every corner of Dominic Kensington's spacious suburban kitchen. He adjusted the temperature on the oven and checked his watch. 6:15 p.m. Catherine's family would arrive in 15 minutes, and everything needed to be perfect. Not because he particularly enjoyed their company, but because that was who Dominic was, a man who took pride in doing things right. Dominic had built his automotive empire from nothing. Growing up with calloused hands from working on cars since he was 12, he'd opened his first shop at 23 and expanded into a chain of high-end establishments across Summerfield. People respected Dominic. They called him fair, hardworking, and honest, qualities that had become increasingly rare in business. "Something smells amazing," Catherine said, entering the kitchen in a sleek navy dress that hugged her slender frame. At 35, she looked as beautiful as the day they'd met 7 years ago. Her honey-blonde hair fell in gentle waves past her shoulders, and her blue eyes sparkled with what Dominic had always believed was love. He wiped his hands on a dish towel and pulled her close, planting a kiss on her forehead. "Just finishing up," he said. "The cornbread's almost done. Your mom will be impressed. You know how she is about Southern cooking." Catherine's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, something Dominic had noticed more frequently lately. He had chalked it up to stress from her job at the marketing firm. "That's the plan," he winked. "Kill them with kindness, right?" Catherine's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then tucked it quickly into her pocket. "They're pulling into the neighborhood now." Dominic nodded, returning to his cooking. Perfect timing. He arranged the cornbread on a decorative plate, mentally preparing for the evening ahead. The Everetts had never warmed to him despite his efforts. Jacqueline Everett, with her perfectly coiffed silver hair and judgmental gaze, treated him like an interloper who'd somehow tricked her daughter into marriage. Frank Everett barely spoke to him beyond curt business discussions, where he not so subtly implied that Dominic's success was more luck than skill. And then there was Logan, Catherine's older brother, whose smug superiority complex was matched only by his inability to maintain any job for longer than 6 months. But they were Catherine's family, and for her, Dominic would endure anything. The doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Catherine called out, hurrying to the entrance. Dominic heard the door open, followed by enthusiastic greetings and the rustle of coats being taken. He straightened his shoulders and put on his most welcoming smile. "There he is," Jacqueline's voice carried into the kitchen. "The chef himself." Dominic stepped forward, wiping his hands one final time. "Jacqueline, great to see you." He accepted her stiff hug, catching a whiff of her overpowering perfume. Frank extended a firm handshake. "Dominic, house looks good." "Thanks, Frank. How was the drive from Clarksville?" "Traffic was a nightmare. Always is these days," Frank said in a tone that suggested he could find fault in anything. Logan stepped forward last, dressed in a blazer that probably cost more than he could afford. "Dominic, still playing house husband, I see." Catherine shot her brother a warning look, but Dominic just laughed it off. "Someone's got to feed you, Logan. Lord knows you can't cook worth a darn." Jacqueline's lips tightened slightly, but Logan forced a chuckle. "Fair enough. Dinner's ready," Dominic announced, guiding them toward the dining room. Hope everyone brought their appetite. The table was set beautifully. Catherine had arranged fresh flowers as the centerpiece, and the good china gleamed under the soft lighting. Dominic had prepared a feast: slow-roasted brisket, homemade cornbread, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and Catherine's favorite salad with cranberries and pecans. "This looks wonderful," Jacqueline admitted, albeit reluctantly, as they took their seats. "Dominic's always been the better cook," Catherine said, squeezing his hand under the table. Frank grunted as he helped himself to the brisket. "Not bad for a mechanic." Dominic caught the barb, but let it slide. "I prefer automotive entrepreneur, but mechanic works too." "How's business?" Logan asked, pouring himself a generous glass of the expensive red wine Dominic had opened. "Still got those 5 shops. 7 now," Dominic corrected mildly. "Opened one in North Summerfield last month, and another in Greystone. We're looking at expanding to Riverside next year." "Impressive," Jacqueline said, though her tone suggested anything but admiration. "You must be working all hours." "It's a commitment," Dominic acknowledged. "But I've got good people. My operations manager, Vincent, handles a lot of the day-to-day now." "Vincent," Frank repeated. "That's the ex-Army fellow." Dominic nodded. "Yes, we've been friends since high school. How fortunate to have such loyal employees," Jacqueline said, emphasizing loyal oddly. Catherine cleared her throat. "Mom, did you tell Dominic about your garden club winning that award?" The conversation shifted to safer topics. Dominic participated when necessary, but mostly he observed. He noticed how Catherine seemed tense, checking her phone under the table. He noticed the meaningful glances exchanged between her and Logan. He noticed how Jacqueline steered every conversation back to finances, family, or future plans. "We should really have grandchildren soon," Jacqueline announced over dessert, a peach cobbler Dominic had made from scratch. "Catherine isn't getting any younger." Catherine stiffened beside him. "Mom, we've talked about this. I'm just saying, dear, 35 is pushing it, medically speaking." Dominic placed his hand on Catherine's knee. "We're not in any rush. When the time is right." "And when will that be?" Jacqueline pressed. "After you open your 20th garage." "Mom," Catherine warned. Frank put down his fork. "What Jacqueline means is that life isn't all about work, son. Family matters." "I couldn't agree more," Dominic said evenly, looking directly at Frank. "Family should always support each other, back each other up, be honest with one another." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "More wine?" Dominic offered, breaking the tension. As the dinner progressed, Dominic found himself counting the minutes until they would leave. Something felt off tonight, more so than usual. The Everetts had never been warm, but tonight there was an undercurrent of something else. Anticipation, perhaps, as if they were waiting for something. "I need to get some more chairs from the garage," Dominic said as they moved to the living room for after-dinner drinks. "The one you're sitting in is wobbling a bit, Frank." "I'll help," Logan offered, starting to rise. "No need," Dominic waved him off. "Enjoy your drink. I'll just be a minute." The evening air was cool as Dominic stepped into the garage. He flipped on the light and headed toward the stack of extra dining chairs in the corner. He was about to grab one when he heard voices from the patio, which adjoined the garage. "You're taking too long," Logan's voice carried clearly through the thin wall. "You need to move things along." "I'm handling it," Catherine's voice replied, defensive. "These things take time if you want to do them right." Dominic froze, his hand on the chair. "I still can't believe you married this loser," Logan sneered. "Dad's right. You need to divorce him before you have kids and get stuck forever." The words hit Dominic like a physical blow. But it was Catherine's response that truly shattered him. "Already working on it. My lawyer says we can take half his business too." Dominic's grip tightened on the chair until his knuckles went white. His breathing became shallow as the truth crashed over him. Catherine, his wife, his partner, the woman he had built his life around, was planning to leave him. And not just leave him, but take half of everything he'd worked for. The voices continued, but they sounded distant now, muffled by the roaring in his ears. He caught fragments. "Prenup won't hold up. Evidence of infidelity would help. Just a few more months." Carefully, he set the chair down. His mind raced, but his body moved with deliberate calm. He took several deep breaths, forcing his face to relax and his posture to loosen. No one could know what he had just discovered. Not yet. Dominic grabbed 2 chairs and headed back inside, his smile firmly in place. "Found them," he announced cheerfully as he re-entered the living room. Catherine and Logan had returned as well, both sipping their drinks. If Dominic hadn't overheard them, he might never have noticed the guilty glance they exchanged. "This should be more comfortable," he told Frank, replacing his chair. "Much obliged," Frank said, settling back with his whiskey. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Dominic laughed at jokes, refilled drinks, and participated in conversations, all while a cold rage built inside him. He studied Catherine, her practiced smile, her casual touches on his arm, her performance of affection. How long had it all been fake? How much of their marriage had been real? When the Everetts finally left around 11, Dominic stood in the doorway beside Catherine, his arm around her waist, waving goodbye. "Well, lovely evening," Jacqueline called out. "We must do this again soon." "Any time," Dominic replied, his smile never faltering. "You're always welcome in our home." As the taillights of their car disappeared down the street, Catherine sighed and leaned against him. "That went well, don't you think?" Dominic nodded, studying her face. She looked relaxed, untroubled. They seemed to enjoy themselves. "Your mom loved the brisket, though she'd never admit it," Catherine yawned. "I'm exhausted. Let's clean up tomorrow." "Sure," Dominic agreed easily. "You go on up. I'll lock up." Catherine pressed a kiss to his cheek, then headed upstairs. Dominic watched her go, this stranger he'd been married to for 5 years. He moved through the house methodically, turning off lights and checking locks, his mind working through what he had learned and what it meant. In their bedroom, Catherine was already under the covers, scrolling through her phone. She set it down when he entered, offering the sleepy smile. "Come to bed, babe." Dominic changed into his pajamas and slid beneath the sheets, keeping to his side of the bed. Usually he would pull her close, tangle his legs with hers, breathe in the scent of her hair. Tonight, the thought made his stomach turn. "Everything okay?" Catherine asked, noticing his distance. "Just tired," he lied. "Big day tomorrow, right? The supplier meeting." She rolled over, her back to him. "Good night, Dominic." "Good night, Catherine." Dominic stared at the ceiling, his mind racing through options, scenarios, plans. Sleep was impossible. Beside him, Catherine's breathing soon deepened into the steady rhythm of slumber, untroubled by guilt or deception. He thought of the business he'd built from nothing, the 12-hour days, the missed vacations, the risks he'd taken. He had done it all believing he was building a future for them both. Now she wanted to take half of it, as if she deserved a reward for her betrayal. The rage that had been building all evening crystallized into something harder, colder, and more focused. Dominic Kensington was not a man who acted rashly. He was not a man who would ever give up what was his, and he was certainly not a man who forgave betrayal. As the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, Dominic had made his decision. Catherine Everett and her family thought they could play him for a fool. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Morning arrived with bitter clarity. Dominic rose early, leaving Catherine still asleep in their bed. He showered and dressed with mechanical precision, his mind clear despite the sleepless night. When he checked his phone, there was a text from Vincent confirming their 9 a.m. meeting at the main shop. Dominic made coffee but didn't prepare breakfast as he usually did. Let Catherine wonder where he was. Let her feel the first hint of uncertainty. He scrawled a brief note. Had to head in early. Meeting with suppliers. Then left. The drive to his flagship automotive shop gave him time to think, acid churning in his gut as Catherine's words replayed in his mind. Already working on it. My lawyer says we can take half his business too. Half his business, as if she had helped build it, as if she deserved it. Dominic pulled into his reserved parking spot at Kensington Automotive, the sleek, modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a customer lounge that rivaled any luxury hotel. This place was his heart and soul, the physical manifestation of years of sacrifice and hard work. Vincent was waiting in Dominic's office, a cup of coffee already in hand. At 40, Vincent Brown looked every bit the former Army soldier, trim, alert, with closely cropped dark hair and observant eyes that missed nothing. But it was his strategic mind Dominic valued most, along with his unwavering loyalty. "You look like a wreck," Vincent said by way of greeting. Dominic closed the door behind him. "We've got a problem." Vincent set down his coffee. "What kind of problem?" "Catherine's planning to divorce me." Dominic's expression was grim. Vincent's face barely changed, but Dominic caught the subtle tightening around his eyes. "You sure?" "Heard it from her own mouth last night. She's working with a lawyer, coming after the business." "Darn," Vincent muttered. "I never trusted her." "Yeah, well, I did," Dominic said, sinking into his chair, the full weight of the betrayal hitting him anew. "Her whole family's in on it. They've probably been planning this for months, Vincent. Who knows how long. What do you need?" This was why Dominic had called Vincent first. No wasted words, no empty sympathy. "I need to protect the business. Then I need to make them regret ever thinking they could do this to me." Vincent nodded slowly. "The business part is straightforward. We move assets, restructure, make it look like there's less to take. As for the rest," he leaned forward. "How far are you willing to go?" "I'm not looking to break any laws," Dominic clarified, "but I want them to feel it. I want them to understand exactly who they try to cross." "Fair enough." Vincent pulled out his phone. "I know someone who can help with the business side. A financial expert who works with high net worth divorces, specializes in asset protection. Can they be trusted?" "Absolutely," Vincent said. "It's your cousin, Bianca Cross." Dominic blinked in surprise. "Bianca works in that field. Last I heard, she was with some investment bank. She switched specialties a few years ago, started her own consulting firm. She's discreet, ruthless, and family. A triple threat." For the first time since discovering Catherine's betrayal, Dominic felt a glimmer of hope. "Set it up. Today, if possible." Vincent was already texting. "What about Catherine? She's going to notice if you start acting differently." "She won't," Dominic said firmly. "As far as she knows, nothing's changed. I'm going to give the performance of a lifetime. Devoted husband, clueless target. Meanwhile, we'll be 10 steps ahead." Vincent's phone pinged with a response. "Bianca can meet us for lunch, 1 p.m. at that steak place by the river. Private room." "Perfect." Dominic stood, energy coursing through him. "I need to make some calls, reschedule my afternoon. Then I'm going to check in with Catherine, act normal." "One more thing," Vincent said, his expression grave. "We should look deeper into her activities. Phone records, emails, bank statements. If she's planning to divorce you, there might be more going on." Dominic hadn't considered that. "You think she's cheating? I think people who betray you once are capable of betraying you twice." The thought sent a fresh wave of anger through Dominic. "Do it, but carefully. I don't want her spooked." "Leave it to me." Vincent stood. "And Dominic, don't let this consume you. That's what they want, to see you broken." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I'm not broken. I'm just getting started." After Vincent left, Dominic checked his phone. No calls or texts from Catherine yet. She was probably too busy plotting with her mother. Dominic decided to call her, maintaining the illusion of normalcy. She answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Dominic, what time is it?" "Almost 8. Sorry to wake you. Just wanted to let you know I had to come in early. Supplier issues." "Oh," she yawned. "I saw your note. Everything okay?" "Nothing I can't handle. Just might be a long day." "That's fine. I was thinking of meeting Mom for lunch anyway." Of course, he thought. Probably to update Jacqueline on their plan. "Sounds good. Tell her I said hi." "Will do. Love you," Catherine said, the words once precious now scraping against his ears like broken glass. "You too. Talk later." Dominic hung up, staring at the phone. He pictured the moment, weeks from now, when he would vanish from her life. when she and her family realized they had lost control of the situation. But not yet. For now, he would play the devoted husband, the hard-working businessman, the unwitting victim. Meanwhile, he would be dismantling the trap they thought they had set for him. His phone buzzed with a text from Bianca. "Looking forward to lunch. Bring all relevant financial docs. We'll fix this." Dominic texted back a simple "thank you," then turned to his computer and began gathering the information he would need. Bank statements, business valuations, tax returns, property deeds, everything that represented the life he'd built, and the life Catherine was trying to steal. By the time he finished, it was nearly noon. He had 17 missed calls from various vendors and employees, but none from Catherine. She was probably busy plotting with her mother. Dominic left instructions with his assistant, Amy, to reschedule his afternoon appointments, then headed to meet Vincent and Bianca at the restaurant. As he drove, Dominic felt oddly calm. The initial shock and pain had hardened into resolve. Catherine and the Everetts believed they could blindside him with divorce papers and walk away with half his business. They had underestimated him. They saw only a successful businessman, a generous provider who looked the other way when they were rude or demanding. They didn't see the fighter who had clawed his way up from nothing. They had no idea who the real Dominic Kensington was, but they soon would. That night, Dominic lay beside Catherine in their bed, a careful 6 inches separating their bodies. He stared at the ceiling, thoughts racing despite his exhaustion. Lunch with Bianca and Vincent had been illuminating and disturbing. "Your prenup is solid," Bianca had explained over perfectly cooked steaks, "but not bulletproof. If her lawyer is good, and based on what you're saying, he probably is, they'll find angles to attack it." Such as, Dominic had asked, commingling of assets, for one. Any joint accounts you've shared, properties purchased together, even business funds used for personal expenses. They'll use those to argue the line between marital and separate property has been blurred. Vincent had leaned forward. "So what's the move?" Bianca, with her sharp eyes and sharper mind, had laid out a plan so elegant in its simplicity that Dominic almost smiled. A shell corporation, controlled by Bianca but benefiting Dominic, a restructuring that would make his businesses appear less profitable than they really were. Strategic movement of assets that couldn't be traced back to him. "Is it legal?" Dominic had asked, his fork poised over his plate. "Completely," Bianca had assured him. "Unethical, perhaps by some standards, but people protect their assets all the time. The key is doing it before she files. Once papers are served, any movement of assets looks suspicious." Now, lying in the dark, Dominic turned his head slightly to study Catherine's profile. Her breathing was deep and regular. She slept easily, untroubled by guilt. He carefully slid out of bed and padded silently to the guest room, where he finally allowed himself to close his eyes. Morning arrived with a flurry of texts. Dominic checked his phone. 15 from Catherine, 5 from Jacqueline, and 27 from Logan, each more frantic than the last. The first from Catherine at 7:03 am. "Where are you? I woke up, and you weren't here." The most recent from Logan at 8:47 am. "Catherine's worried sick. Answer your darn phone, Kensington." Dominic smiled grimly. Let them worry. This was just the beginning. He texted Catherine. "Sorry. Couldn't sleep. Went for an early drive. Meeting Vincent for breakfast to discuss business. Back later." Her response was immediate. "You scared me. Call when you're done." "Will do," he replied, with no intention of calling. He drove to the diner where he was actually meeting Vincent. Satisfaction mingled with anger as he pictured the Everetts scrambling to understand his behavior. For people who planned to blindside him, they certainly didn't like being left in the dark themselves. Vincent was already in a booth, coffee mug in hand. He looked up as Dominic slid in across from him. "Phase 1 seems to be working," Dominic said by way of greeting, showing Vincent the frantic messages. "Good. Confusion is our ally," Vincent replied, pushing a manila folder across the table. "You need to see this." Dominic opened it to find phone records, credit card statements, and surveillance photos. His stomach clenched as he recognized Catherine in several images, seated across from a man he didn't know, in various restaurants and cafes. In one, they were holding hands. "His name is Brandon Albright," Vincent said quietly. "Divorce attorney, 44, specializes in representing spouses of high-net-worth individuals. The betrayal, already painful, cut deeper. She's sleeping with her divorce lawyer. Looks that way." The photos spanned the last 3 months. Dominic's hands shook slightly as he closed the folder. "Her family knows. Based on the texts we accessed, yes. Her mother actually introduced them." A cold, clarifying rage washed through Dominic. "This is even worse than we thought. It's not just about money. She's been—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm sorry, man," Vincent said sincerely. "But we needed to know what we're dealing with." Dominic nodded, his jaw tight. "This changes things. Now it's not just about protecting what's mine. It's about making sure they all get what they deserve." "What's our next step?" Vincent asked. "We move forward with Bianca's plan. Transfer the assets, create the shell corporation. But we need more evidence. Texts, emails, anything that proves Catherine and her family were conspiring." "Already on it," Vincent assured him. "Think she's cheating with anyone else?" "Don't know, and I don't care," Dominic said, though the cold fury in his eyes suggested otherwise. "But if she is, we'll find out. In the meantime, I'm going to keep giving the performance of a lifetime. Devoted husband, completely oblivious. I want everything in place so that when I'm ready to strike, there's nothing left for them to take." "And when will that be?" Vincent asked. Dominic thought for a moment. "There's the charity gala next month, the one the Everetts always attend to show off their philanthropy. That's when I do it." Vincent's eyes widened. "Public humiliation, maximum witnesses." "Exactly." Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. "They wanted to blindside me with divorce papers. I'm going to blindside them with the truth, in front of everyone they know." As he drove home to face Catherine, Dominic's mind was crystal clear. The pain was still there, a constant ache in his chest, but it was overshadowed by purpose. Catherine was planning to file for divorce, confident she would take half of everything. But he was already 3 steps ahead. He arrived home to find Catherine cooking dinner, something she rarely did. The kitchen smelled of garlic and herbs, and a bottle of wine breathed on the counter. "This is a nice surprise," Dominic commented, setting down his briefcase. Catherine turned from the stove, her smile tight around the edges. "I thought it would be nice to cook for you for a change. You're always taking care of everyone else." Guilt. That's what this was. She'd signed divorce papers in her mind already and was trying to ease her conscience. "Smells fantastic," Dominic said, forcing a warm tone. He crossed to her and kissed her cheek, ignoring the revulsion twisting his stomach. "What's the occasion? Does there need to be one?" Catherine echoed his earlier words. "I just wanted to do something nice for my husband." "That's sweet of you," he replied, deciding to play along. "Let me wash up. I'll open the wine." Dinner was surreal. Catherine chatted about her day, carefully omitting any mention of her mother or her family. Dominic responded in kind, maintaining the perfect mask. "This is delicious," he said honestly, surprised by the quality. "You've been holding out on me." Catherine smiled, a flash of genuine pleasure crossing her face. "Mom's recipe. She taught me years ago, but I never had the patience, until today." "Well, I'm glad you found it," Dominic said with a grin. "We should do this more often." A shadow crossed Catherine's expression. "Yes, we should." But they both knew they wouldn't. After dinner, as they sat on the couch with their wine, Catherine nestled against him, a show of affection that once would have warmed his heart. Now it took everything he had not to push her away. "Dominic," she said softly, "are you happy? With us, I mean." The question nearly made him laugh. What a performance, concerned wife, checking on their marriage while conspiring to destroy it. Of course I am, he lied smoothly. Why do you ask? I don't know, she said, tracing the rim of her glass. We've both been so busy lately. I just wonder if we're growing apart. Never, Dominic replied firmly. The word tasted bitter. We've hit a busy patch, that's all. It'll pass. Catherine nodded, seeming reassured. Good, because you know how much I love you, right? You're so good to my family, even when they don't make it easy. The declaration of love, once cherished, now felt like sandpaper on his ears. But Dominic faked a gentle smile and pulled her closer. They're family, he said simply, and that's what matters. Later that night, as Catherine slept, Dominic slipped out of bed and went to his home office. He sent a quick text to Vincent. She's bought it completely. Keep digging. I want everything. Their plan, our plan, all of it ready. Vincent replied moments later. Already on it. You hanging in there? Dominic considered. Was he okay? He was living with a woman who was betraying him, pretending to still love her while he plotted revenge. No, he wasn't okay, but he was functional, focused, and determined to win. I'm fine, he texted back. Just ready for it to be over. Over the next week, Dominic maintained the charade, while Bianca finalized the asset transfers. The Shell Corporation, officially named Nova Holdings, became the technical owner of 5 of his 7 automotive shops. The remaining 2 would transfer within a week. On paper, Dominic was nothing more than the operational manager of the business he had built with his own 2 hands. It was a complex web of legal and financial maneuvering, but it served its purpose. When Catherine filed for divorce and demanded half, she would find that everything amounted to far less than she imagined. Dominic was in his office when Amy buzzed him. Mr. Kensington, there's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent. Dominic glanced at his calendar. No appointment scheduled. Did he give a name? Yes, sir. Michael Prentice. Says he's an attorney. So this was it. Catherine was having him served at his workplace, a humiliating touch that didn't surprise him. Send him in, Dominic said, arranging his features into an expression of polite confusion. Michael Prentice, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a briefcase that looked more expensive than his suit, entered. Mr. Kensington, he began formally. I represent Catherine Everett in the matter of my wife. Dominic interrupted, injecting confusion into his voice. What matter? Is Catherine all right? Prentice looked uncomfortable. She's fine, sir. I'm here to serve you with divorce papers. Mrs. Everett has filed for dissolution of your marriage. Dominic let his face register shock, confusion, hurt, anger. Divorce? That can't be right. Must be some mistake. I assure you, there's no mistake. Prentice held out a thick envelope. These are legal documents outlining Mrs. Everett's petition. You'll need to respond within 30 days. Dominic made no move to take the envelope. I need to talk to Catherine. This must be some kind of misunderstanding. I'm afraid Mrs. Everett has instructed me to inform you that all communication should go through legal representatives from this point forward. Prentice set the envelope on the desk. My contact information is included. Please have your attorney reach out to discuss next steps. My attorney? I don't have an attorney for this. Dominic let his voice rise with distress. I didn't even know my wife wanted a divorce. Prentice shifted, clearly uncomfortable. All relevant information is in the filing, Mr. Kensington. Good day. After he left, Dominic sat heavily and opened the envelope. The legal language was cold and impersonal, but clear. Catherine sought not only dissolution of their marriage, but also half of his business assets, the house, and substantial spousal support. Grounds, irreconcilable differences. Dominic picked up his phone and called Vincent. It's done, he said. I've been served. How are you holding up? Vincent asked. I'm fine, Dominic replied. It actually feels good to have it out in the open. What's your next move? I'll call her. Play the hurt, confused husband. See what she says. Then I string her along until the gala. Let her think I'm shattered, that I'll agree to anything to save the marriage. She won't buy that, Vincent warned. She knows you. She thinks she knows me, Dominic corrected. But she's never seen me like this. After hanging up, Dominic took a deep breath and dialed Catherine's number. It went straight to voicemail. Of course she wouldn't pick up. Catherine, he said, letting his voice crack. I just got served with divorce papers at my office. What's going on? Call me back, please. 5 minutes later, his phone rang. The caller ID read Jacqueline Everett. The audacity almost made him laugh, but he answered calmly. Jacqueline, he said coldly. I'm surprised to hear from you. Dominic. Jacqueline's voice was carefully modulated. Catherine told me what happened. I know this must be a shock. A shock, he repeated. That's one word for it. Being served with divorce papers by a wife who was cooking me dinner 3 days ago. I'd call that more than a shock. Jacqueline sighed. I know, dear. It's unfortunate things came to this. Unfortunate, Dominic repeated incredulously. That your daughter ended our marriage without speaking to me first. That I was blindsided in my office. Yes, that's one word for it. Now, Dominic, I know you're upset, Jacqueline said. Catherine's very distraught too. This hasn't been easy for her. Where is she, Jacqueline? Why isn't she calling me herself? Catherine's very upset, Jacqueline deflected. She needed some time. But I hope you'll be reasonable about this. Dragging things out will only make it harder for everyone. The implication was clear. Roll over, give Catherine what she wanted, and it would all go away. Tell Catherine to call me, Dominic said firmly. Today, or the next conversation we have will be in court. He hung up before Jacqueline could respond. An hour later, Catherine finally called. Dominic, she began, carefully controlled. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Find out what way, Catherine? That my wife wants a divorce. That she couldn't even tell me to my face. That she had me served at my office like a criminal. I knew you'd try to talk me out of it, Catherine said defensively. I needed to be sure the papers were filed. Talk you out of it, Dominic repeated. So there's nothing to discuss. No chance to work it out. You just decided our marriage is over. It's been over for a long time, Dominic. You know that. No, Catherine. I don't know that. 3 days ago, you were cooking me dinner. You gave no indication you were unhappy, let alone that you wanted a divorce. I've been unhappy for a while, she insisted. I just didn't know how to tell you. So you told a lawyer, Dominic fired back. And your family. Everyone but me. She was silent for a moment. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. Sorry. You're not just asking for a divorce, Catherine. You want half my business, a business you had no hand in building. How is that reasonable? The business grew during our marriage, Catherine said, parroting legal advice. Under Weldon law, that's community property. So this is about money. Is that it? It's about what I'm entitled to, she insisted. What's fair? Dominic nearly laughed at the irony. Fair would have been telling me this before you blindsided me with legal papers. Fair would have been having a real conversation about our problems. You ambushed me, Catherine. I know you're upset. Upset doesn't begin to cover it. Dominic injected desperation into his voice. Catherine, please, let's talk about this face to face. No lawyers, no parents, just us. I'm not ready to throw away 5 years of marriage. She hesitated, obviously weighing her options. All right. Dinner tomorrow night, neutral ground. That steakhouse downtown. Thank you, he said, sounding relieved. I appreciate it. Dominic ended the call and sat back, a grim smile on his lips. Catherine thought she was still in control, giving him a chance to plead his case before she took half. She had no idea she was walking straight into his trap. He spent the rest of the day with his actual attorney, Denise Rockwell, a formidable lawyer who specialized in high-net-worth divorces. She reviewed Bianca's restructured plans and gave them her seal of approval. "They'll challenge this," Denise warned. "They'll argue you moved assets to hide them after Catherine announced her intention to divorce." "Let them argue," Dominic said. "We have paperwork showing these deals were in motion long before she served me. Can they prove otherwise?" "Probably not. But divorce courts can be unpredictable." "They'll try to paint me as the bad guy," Dominic said, "which is why I want you to negotiate as though we're considering their demands. Keep them confident while we finalize our counterstrike." Denise raised an eyebrow. "That's a risky game." "They drew first blood," Dominic replied. "I'm just finishing it." The following evening, Dominic arrived at the steakhouse early. He chose a quiet booth, ordered a drink, and waited. Catherine arrived exactly on time, looking polished in a black dress he'd once bought her for her birthday. A calculated choice. "Thanks for meeting me," Dominic said, once she was seated. "I think we owe each other that much." "I think so too," she agreed, setting her purse aside. "How are you holding up? How do you think?" Dominic let his voice tremble slightly. "My wife blindsides me with divorce papers, and I still don't understand why. I thought we were happy." Catherine's expression wavered. "We haven't been happy for a while. You never said anything." "I didn't know how," she claimed. "It just felt like we were on different pages." "Different pages," Dominic repeated. "Catherine, you were cooking me dinner, sleeping in my bed, and all the while planning to leave me and take half my business." Catherine shifted uncomfortably, but didn't deny it. "I'm not saying I handled it well." "Handled it well." Dominic let out a short, bitter laugh, then softened his tone to sound earnest. "Catherine, despite all this, I still love you. I still believe in us. Give me a chance to fix what's broken." She blinked, clearly thrown off by his plea. "Even after everything?" He nodded, reaching across the table to take her hand. 5 years, Catherine. We can't just throw that away. Give me a month. If you still want a divorce, then I'll give you whatever you want." She studied him suspiciously. "A month. Just a month. Consider it a trial separation, if you like, but keep the door open to saving our marriage." Catherine hesitated, obviously calculating how that might help or hinder her plans. "All right. 1 month. But the filing stands. Brandon, my lawyer, says the clock has started." Dominic nodded. "I understand. I just hope by the end of the month you'll change your mind." The rest of dinner was an exercise in deception. Dominic listened to Catherine's manufactured complaints, most likely fed by her lawyer, and apologized for neglect he'd never committed. By the end of the night, she seemed almost sympathetic, telling him she would think about giving their relationship another try. Dominic walked her to her car, planting a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Thank you for hearing me out." She nodded. "I'll call you." As he watched her drive away, Dominic's face hardened. Catherine thought he was playing right into her hands, and that she was still orchestrating his downfall. Soon enough, she would realize the entire script had been flipped. The next 2 weeks were a carefully choreographed dance. Dominic showered Catherine with flowers, gifts, and affection, every gesture calculated to convince her of his desperation to save their marriage. Meanwhile, Vincent and Bianca moved forward with the restructuring, ensuring that Catherine would be left empty-handed. They discovered more than that. Vincent uncovered phone records, financial statements, and text messages indicating that Catherine had been meeting with various advisors and appraisers for nearly a year. The Everetts had planned to manipulate the divorce settlement to force Dominic to sell his business to a shell company owned by Logan, at a fraction of its real value. "They were going to steal my entire life's work," Dominic said quietly, anger burning cold in his chest. Vincent nodded. "Until you found out. Now the shoe's on the other foot." Dominic set his jaw. "I want every bit of proof compiled into a neat package ready for the gala. Texts, photos, shell company docs, everything. Already in progress," Vincent assured him. "Bianca's handling the presentation. It'll be professional, devastating, and completely legal." Dominic allowed himself a grim smile. They wanted to play dirty. Let's show them how it's done. When the evening of the charity gala finally arrived, Dominic felt an odd sense of calm. He had planned every move, anticipated every counter. Tonight, the Everetts, and all of Summerfield's elite, would learn exactly who they had underestimated. Catherine was at Jacqueline and Frank's house, so Dominic picked her up there. She looked stunning in a blue backless dress he had bought for an anniversary the year before. He allowed himself a moment of appreciation for her beauty, tinged with the knowledge of her deception. "You look incredible," he said, holding the car door for her. "Thank you," she replied, her smile hopeful. "You look pretty handsome yourself." He drove them to the hotel hosting the gala, where 300 of the city's most influential citizens mingled. Dominic greeted acquaintances with a warm handshake, exchanging pleasantries while scanning the crowd. Vincent hovered near the AV booth, giving him a discreet thumbs up. Everything was set. At dinner, Dominic played the role of gracious host, focusing on the charitable cause. He laughed with Catherine, made small talk with Jacqueline and Frank, and politely ignored Logan's smug remarks. At 8:45 p.m., the charity's director took the stage, thanked everyone for their generosity, and introduced Dominic as the night's final speaker. Applause rippled through the crowd as he approached the podium. "Thank you, Dr. Reynolds," Dominic began, gazing out at the attentive audience. He spotted Catherine and the Everetts at a table near the front, watching him expectantly. "And thank you all for being here tonight to support such a vital cause." He spoke for a few minutes about the charity's mission, the importance of pediatric health care, and the wonderful work the hospital was doing. Then he took a breath, his heart pounding. "And now," Dominic continued, "I'd like to share something personal, a lesson I've learned about trust, betrayal, and standing up for what's right." He clicked a remote, and the screen behind him changed from the charity's logo to a photo of Catherine and Brandon holding hands in a quiet corner of a restaurant. "This is my wife, Catherine," Dominic said, his voice steely. "And this is her lover, Brandon Albright, who also happens to be her divorce attorney." Gasps and murmurs spread through the room. Catherine stiffened, her face draining of color. Jacqueline's hand flew to her mouth in horror. Logan looked like he'd been punched. Dominic let the silence linger, then clicked again. Text messages between Catherine and Jacqueline appeared, discussing a plan to divorce Dominic and seize half of his business. Another click brought up bank records showing Catherine siphoning funds into a private account. He read aloud, "Already working on it. My lawyer says we can take half his business too." A ripple of shock swept the audience. Dominic clicked again, revealing documents outlining Logan's shell company meant to buy out Dominic's automotive empire for a fraction of its value. "And this," Dominic said, "was their plan to take everything I've built, under the guise of divorce proceedings." The audience was riveted, appalled, fascinated. The Everetts sat frozen, unable to move or speak. Dominic displayed the last slide detailing Brandon's professional misconduct, sworn affidavits from 2 other women he'd represented and seduced, who had lost everything to his unethical tactics. "This evidence will be sent to the State Bar Association," Dominic concluded. "They take a dim view of attorneys who behave this way. Now let's return our attention to what truly matters, supporting the children of Summerfield. I am pleased to announce a personal donation of $500,000 to the new pediatric cancer wing." Stunned silence followed, then the crowd erupted into a confused, tentative applause. Dominic stepped away from the podium, his pulse hammering. The deed was done. As he walked off the stage, he nodded once to Vincent, who gave a small salute. They had pulled it off perfectly. Catherine's face was ashen. Jacqueline looked close to fainting. Frank and Logan were locked in a furious, whispered argument. Dominic didn't return to their table. He exited the ballroom, ignoring the hushed whispers that followed in his wake. Let Catherine and her family deal with the aftermath. This was the justice they had earned. The next morning, Dominic awoke to 47 missed calls and texts, as he had once predicted. 23 from Catherine, 15 from Jacqueline, 5 from Frank, and 4 from Logan. He ignored them all, reading instead a text from Bianca. "We're on the front page of the Summerfield Business Journal. Articles titled, 'Local Business Owner Exposes Divorce Conspiracy at Charity Gala.' Perfect coverage." He skimmed the article. It detailed the shocking revelations from the night before, complete with quotes from attendees describing how the Everett family fled immediately after the presentation. The Everetts had refused to comment, and Brandon was unreachable. The consequences rolled in quickly. Logan was soon under investigation by the Weldon Securities Board for fraudulent business practices. Frank faced an IRS audit after Bianca delivered evidence of long-term tax evasion. Jacqueline was shunned by her social circle, and the country club quietly canceled her membership. Brandon Albright's license was suspended pending a full disciplinary hearing. Catherine suffered the worst fall. With no access to Dominic's assets and no way to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to, she maxed out her credit cards in weeks. Her marketing firm, fearing reputational harm, let her go. Dominic watched it all from a distance, not out of malice but to confirm that justice was being served. He felt no joy, only relief. They had tried to ruin him, but in the end, they had destroyed themselves. 3 weeks after the gala, Catherine arrived at Dominic's main shop, looking worn and desperate. Amy buzzed Dominic to announce her, and he allowed Catherine in. She looked nothing like her old self. No flawless hair, no designer dress, just jeans and a sweater, with red-rimmed eyes. "I need help," she said, voice trembling. "I lost my job. My credit cards are maxed out. Mom's in the hospital with stress-related heart trouble. Dad's about to lose their house. I don't know what to do." Dominic studied her calmly. "And why is that my problem?" Her lip quivered. "They're my parents. They're old, Dominic. They've lost everything else. The house is all they have left." "You tried to take everything from me," Dominic said. "Money, property, my work. You and your family plotted to steal my entire life. And now you come here asking for help." "I know," she whispered. "I was greedy, selfish, and cruel. But I'm begging you. Please have mercy. If not for me, then for them." Dominic was silent for a long moment, considering. He finally spoke. "I'm not giving you or your parents money. That will never happen. But I will tell you this. Bianca is contesting the federal tax line on their house because it's an interesting legal challenge for her firm. If your parents are honest about what they owe, they might keep it under the homestead exemption." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I'll tell them." She moved to leave, then turned back. "Dominic, for what it's worth, I really am sorry." He met her gaze without softness. "I'm sure you are. Goodbye, Catherine." She left without another word, and Dominic sat for a while, reflecting. The woman he had once loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who had betrayed him. He felt only a sense of closure. The divorce was finalized 3 months later in a brief, almost anticlimactic court session. Catherine received a small lump sum, just enough to end the matter swiftly, and walked away with only her personal belongings. She tried to catch Dominic's eye outside the courtroom, but he offered only a distant nod before turning away. That evening, Dominic sat in the house that had once been theirs. He'd redecorated, removing every trace of Catherine. New furniture, new decor, his fresh start. Soon after, he sold the house altogether. Too many memories haunted its rooms, and he purchased a sleek penthouse in downtown Summerfield, its modern lines mirroring his renewed outlook. At the penthouse warming party, surrounded by true friends and loyal colleagues, he felt light for the first time in months. Vincent pulled him aside on the balcony overlooking the sparkling city. "You did it," Vincent said. "I was worried at first this would eat you alive, but you came through stronger." Dominic gazed at the skyline. It changed me, that's for sure. But not in the way Catherine or her family hoped. They clinked glasses. Two choices, Vincent offered. And consequences, Dominic added firmly. He looked at the lights of Summerfield below, thinking of how close he'd come to losing everything. But in the end, the Everetts had only freed him from a loveless marriage, revealing the truth he'd needed to see. Betrayal could break a man, if he let it. Dominic had refused. He had fought back, and he had won. The rest of the evening was filled with laughter and celebration, the warmth of genuine friendships, the promise of a future built on truth rather than lies. As Dominic stood on his balcony late that night, long after his guests had departed, he raised one last silent toast to himself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well. And that was exactly what Dominic Kensington intended to do.